The number one principle is human beings have free will. So let's talk about jobs and employment. When we think about jobs, we think about whether or not we're happy with what we do, whether or not what we do is like a means to an end, or are we doing it because we love what we do? Is it our passion? I think for most people in the world that we live in today, like, we work as a means to an end. It's not what we love to do. It's just what we do for money, to make ends meet, to pay the bills. And also, are we being fairly compensated for what we do, and are we being compensated based on performance? Are we being compensated based on like past compensation history? In the United States, like, a lot of people are largely unhappy with their work environment due to usually like a lack of work-life balance. Most of us feel like we working more than we spend time at home. We spend more time in the office than we do in our own home. You spend 8, 9, maybe more hours a day, 5 days a week, maybe more depending on your job, working in an office, a job at a location. Now imagine if you hated your job and you spending that much time at work, and you come home, like, you work like 9 to 5, you come home, maybe you sit in traffic for several hours, you get home, you're tired, you just want to relax. Let's say you wanted to go to the gym, but you didn't just go to the gym because you're tired and you gotta eat, you want to just relax and unwind. Because again, if you hate what you do, your home is probably going to be your sanctuary, your place for you to retreat from whatever your environment is at work that you are trying to get away from. And next thing you know, it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and it's time to go to bed, and you do it all over again. And if you're like me, you don't sleep very well because your anxiety about having to go to that job that you don't like, right? So then you're losing sleep at the same time. You wake up, whatever time your alarm clock goes off, probably barely want to get out of bed, but you wake up and you go to do it all again. It's just a repetitive cycle that when you're in that sort of repetitive cycle in some place that you don't like, causes a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, which takes away from the human lifespan. Stress kills, right? We know that. We know that from research and science, that stress plays an important part on our physical health, not just our mental health. Yes, it can cause, like, obviously mental sort of things like anxiety, depression. Some people have nervous breakdowns, right? Depending. But it also, that in turn has a physiological effect on the human body. And what happens up here has a lot of effect on what happens throughout our body. And we know that countries where people are happier at work, they tend to have a longer lifespan, right? So we know all this. We have all this data collected, right? We have all this information. So why aren't we doing anything about it? Shouldn't there be like a standard for work-life balance for all human beings, right? Is it really necessary now in 2019 for me to sit at a desk for 8 to 9 hours a day, 5 days a week? Let me ask the question then. How many people sit at their job and they are busy every second for all 8 hours of those days? And so, like, there's not a single second that you have of free time. Should be a lot of crickets, because most people that I know, there's a lot of downtime. Like, you work task by task, project by project, maybe meeting to meeting, maybe. If you're like me, you hate meetings. I hate meetings. It's like a waste of time. So, what's the big deal with working remotely and working from home? Why is that like a privilege instead of the standard? Because I believe in the future, for the human condition and the human race, working remotely is the standard. Imagine you are living on Earth and your job is on Mars. That's a hell of a commute, right? There's a time difference, obviously, and there is some distance to travel. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, technology allows for us to work remotely in different conditions from different places around the world. You don't even have to be in the same place as your employer, in the same country as your employer. So how come it seems like a privilege? Like, there's some jobs that are trending or more progressive where they're like, working remotely is the standard. Like, that's how they run their company. Everybody works remotely. You have unlimited PTO. unlimited vacation, where you manage your own schedule and your own time and your own PTO with your workload and balance that stuff out. And then there's some jobs, a lot of jobs that I've worked in, where it's like a strict 9 to 5. You must be at your desk. You get two 15-minute breaks. You get maybe a half-hour lunch or an hour, depending. And if you go somewhere and do something and somebody can't find you, it's where is so-and-so? What are they doing? You're not being productive. You're not doing your job. It just doesn't make any sense, considering, like, again, where we are technologically and what we can do with technology. Because for me, like, I hear all the time, oh, where's so-and-so? They're working remotely today. It's like, oh, okay, what's the difference between me and them? They're a VP, a manager, a president, or something like that, which is, like, not fair. Again, we have this separate and not equal sort of way we treat each other, right? As if to say you have to be a certain status, level, or type of person to have these benefits. So then if you're not one of those things, then you get treated less respectfully, less humanely, and that just doesn't make sense, because we're all the same. Like, who wouldn't like to work remotely, or who wouldn't like to spend more time with the family, who wouldn't like to be able to work from home and be able to watch their children or take their children to this and that, or catch up on some other stuff. Maybe they have projects, maybe they have a house and they have things to do around the home. Like, who wouldn't like that? So it just doesn't seem fair that there's this discrepancy between the two, and it's more like a privilege to be able to work remotely than it is like the standard. Because like I said, a lot of places that is the norm, that is the standard. Like, you work remotely, you work from home. I believe that a lot of it has to do with how we have established things early on in human civilization to how it's kind of plateaued. Like, we haven't really pushed a lot of things past what we originally created. Like, for instance, job interviews. Why are we still doing job interviews the same way we've been doing them? I mean, again, maybe there's a couple of trending, progressive sort of like places that are trying new things, but for the most part, a lot of people do the same old, like, oh, you call in, you have a phone interview, then you come in for a physical interview, and then you like interview. What the how does that help anything? Like, what I can, because like, if it's all based on an interview, if you can talk a good game, you got the job. You might not actually be able to do anything, but if you impress them with your words or your composure or your character or who knows what, you could tell a funny story and they'd be like, I like that guy, I like that lady, I like that person, then you got the job. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. We still do interviews the way we've been doing it for a long time. Nothing that much has changed. So same thing with working. Like, we still work from a desk at a location. And what does that look like trending forward for the human race? So in the future, what most likely will be is working remotely will be a standard, again, as we expand the human race and we move farther out into the next frontier and occupy multiple planets, et cetera, et cetera. But starting with the one we have now, Earth, working remotely, taking cars off the road, eliminating the traffic and congestion. Like I said, when I was back in LA, I only lived like 15, 20 minutes from my job, but it took an hour to get home on average a day because of traffic, because everybody is going at the same place at the same time. And it's pollution, it's congestion, it's frustration. It has this trickling, sort of spiraling, a ripple effect where now you've got people who are trying to rush because they're expecting that traffic and that sort of like delay, and they're trying to like get home or get to work as soon as possible, to get to work for the latter, because they may have a supervisor or boss that's like who's really strict on being on time. And so people get into this like rush, sort of feverish kind of mode. You get road rage, and all of a sudden it's like, where are you going? Like, why are you in such a hurry? For me, the question is more of like, is it worth it? Is it worth possibly dying? You speeding through traffic and everything. And it's like, for me, it's like, 7 or something in the morning, and I'm like driving the speed limit and all that, just being safe. And this person's like zipping and trying to cut through. And I'm just looking, and there's like 2 of us on the road. Like, seriously, like, what's the problem?
Boy, have you lost your mind? Cause I'll help you find it.
And I'm like, really? What's the point? Like, is it worth it? Like, do you really, like, you must love your job. Do you really love your job that much that you're willing to kill yourself and me to get to it? I don't think so. most of the time we're just in. Some people are just in that rush mode. They're just like, oh my God, this person's driving so slow. Let me go around them. But it's like no, they're not driving slow for the most part. They're driving the speed limit. Right? To me, it's only a couple occasions where there's somebody who's driving below the speed limit. Usually, an elderly person, somebody's handicapped or something like that, and they have a reason to why they're driving a little slower. But most time, people are just driving the speed limit. It's like, okay, calm down.